Hello, and welcome to MICIP Monday. This is the fourth installment of a five-part series of technical assistance sessions conducted by Wayne Risa. MICIP stands for Michigan's Integrated Continuous Improvement Process. Today's session is titled Monitoring and Adjusting. How do we know if it's working, and what do we do if it isn't? In this session, we will examine the progress monitoring system. This includes making needed adjustments. Informed by data, this work will allow your team to step back, reflect, and refine your continuous improvement plan with a sustained focus on equity. March is associated with International Women's Month, National Reading Month, St. Patrick's Day, and of course, March Madness. With that thinking in mind, here is the game plan we will follow for today's session. We will begin with our tip-off, which includes our welcome and introductions, and a review of the MICIP Monday sessions held prior to today's session. We will then head into our second quarter, where we will examine the monitoring process, followed by the third quarter, where we will discuss the why and the how of making adjustments to your continuous improvement plans. Finally, in the fourth quarter, we aim to finish strong as we discuss communication plans and wrap up today's session. And as customary to the game of basketball, each quarter will end with a timeout to assure that we attend to the importance of maintaining an equity mindset at every stage of the process. Now, I'm excited to introduce our starting lineup of presenters who will facilitate today's learning with you. We have Alyn Moore, Sabrina Rudy, Kevin Siefker, and myself, Rosalind Ruffin. We all serve as educational improvement consultants and district liaisons at Wayne Risa. But our lineup would not be complete without you as our fifth starter. So we thank you for being here today. It is our goal that you leave this session having one, built an understanding and fluency around the continuous improvement process and the MICIP platform. Two, having the ability to apply the concepts of monitoring and adjusting district improvement plans. And three, employing an equity stance for every step of the continuous improvement process. Let the first quarter begin. This visual shows the entire continuous improvement process. The process is broken into three large elements. Our previous sessions have covered the topics in yellow and blue, that of assessing the needs of a district and planning the goals, strategies, and activities. If we think of this process using our basketball analogy, we can think of prepping a team to compete during the tournament. The coaches have assessed their team's strengths and identified areas for growth. The coaching staff has created the offensive and defensive plays and drawn a game plan that they believe would help them be successful. The team now has only to hit the court and implement. And that is where we are going to focus our learning today, on implementation of the plans you've created, monitoring the progress of that plan, and making mid-course corrections to the plan based on data. The symbols in green highlight the importance and recursive nature of the implement, monitor, and adjust process. It is important to note that evaluation is summative. It takes place once you've reached the end measure date that was set. During this time, you will identify the level to which the actual results aligned with the intended outcomes. So we begin with implementation, but at the point, we begin utilizing a new strategy, program, or process. We should begin monitoring for the desired results. You then monitor the data, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to determine your next steps. These Two steps will be repeated continuously to assure that you are on the right path to reach the results you seek. Lastly, there is evaluation. You want to ask yourself during this process, are we there yet? Are we ready to cut the net as a sign of achievement of the goals that we set forth? Have we made the improvement we sought? Again, this session will focus not on the evaluation aspect, but on monitoring the goal and making adjustments when and where necessary. In order to begin the process of monitoring, we're going to have to look back at our sample data story that was used in the previous MICIP Monday sessions. The goal was to increase student attendance. The challenge? Students were disengaged from school. The team conducted a root cause analysis and determined that there were barriers to attendance caused or exacerbated by disruptions to in-person instruction. So the team decided that they wanted to re-engage those students over the course of the next 2 academic school years. Next, they created their interim and end target measures. By the end of the 2023 school year, the goal is to ultimately increase the daily average attendance from 75% to 85%. But in order to make sure that they were on the right path, they created interim targets, which were to increase all students' attendance by 10% per quarter. Then the team had to determine what strategies the adults would implement to meet the goal of re-engaging students in the learning process. This district chose to implement relationship building practices in all the schools within their district. Once the strategy was selected, the team then had to determine in what specific activities they would engage to build relationships with students in their respective schools. In order to do this, they selected 4 activities, which included professional learning for teachers on evidence-based relationship building strategies, a process for reaching out to students who were absent, instituting home visits, and biweekly reviews of the data they were collecting. We have the plan. Now, how do we know if it's working? This is the end of quarter 1. We will now take a timeout for equity. Let's now consider a few questions that the continuous improvement team should have considered while developing the plan. Do the activities selected focus on reducing barriers and increasing access to quality learning for all students? And have we created spaces for ongoing critical conversations for all stakeholders? Just a few points to consider to ensure that equity is at the forefront as we set our goals. It's now time for the second quarter, and I will pass the ball to my colleague, Alin.
All right, team. Now that the first quarter is over and we've had a moment in the huddle to review the game plan, it's time to implement and monitor what we agreed to do and how we will execute. This means we need to get in the habit of reviewing what we have done and what we have put into play. It's like watching game day tapes to improve the game plan and make sure that all players are able to play a part in the game. I want to reiterate what was just stated a few slides ago. The minute you start implementing, you start monitoring, and what gets monitored gets done. Monitoring. This is to review the implementation and impact of actions. Monitoring in MICIP is the responsibility of both the district and the school. It involves implementation, including fidelity, scale and reach, capacity, and impact. School teams are responsible for gathering the monitoring data for the goals and strategies assigned to their buildings or programs, and for reporting it to the district continuous improvement team. The district is responsible for collecting the data across the entire district and is also responsible for monitoring goals and strategies assigned only to the district. An example might be creating and implementing a district mission statement with an equity lens so that all goals set are sure to impact all students. Both the school and district teams should participate in analyzing the data regarding goals and strategies assigned to them. It is crucial to remember that this is definitely a team effort and cannot nor should not be done by one star player. Monitoring is not just an isolated component of the continuous improvement cycle. It is also connected to other components of the continuous improvement cycle. As Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says, success isn't always about greatness, it's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come. We must always remember consistency is key. The team cannot think about monitoring for the first time when it is time to monitor. The team must consider the elements you see on this timeline. The first element is implementation fidelity. This is when we ask, are we enacting the strategy as defined in the implementation guide? The next element is scale and reach. We should ask, to what extent are we reaching targeted populations and desired stages of implementation? The third element is capacity. At this point, we want to know, are we making progress on supporting the completion of the strategies and activities by the due date set? And the fourth element is the impact of these strategies and activities when engaging in the assess needs, plan, and implement processes. The evidence for each of the four progress monitoring elements is critical, as you will constantly be asked along the way, how do you know it's working? What is your evidence? In keeping with the sports analogy, in order to compete at the highest level, there is plenty of practice, which equals consistency. But you also have to have the right equipment and gear to practice and practice and practice again. In other words, while you are monitoring, it is critical to have the right tools during the data collection and analysis process. For example, having tools such as a strategy implementation guide and an aligned monitoring tool can be critical to monitoring implementation fidelity. Monitoring completion of activities can be done directly in the MICIP platform. Having your information in the same place is not only convenient, but helps with making the ongoing monitoring process efficient. While you are in this monitoring strategy or using monitoring strategy, remember that judgments regarding implementation or impact should not be based on hunches. They need to be based on evidence, on the data. Therefore, knowing what data we are collecting, how we are collecting it, and the frequency with which we are collecting it all needs to be a part of the planning process. So I will say it again for consistency's sake. Evidence is crucial. Evidence is critical. Evidence is necessary. So we will keep notes and show our evidence as we use the tools such as the strategy implementation guide or any aligned monitoring tools. For these resources can be critical to monitoring implementation fidelity. It is also critical that the district monitor the effectiveness of its systems as part of the implementation. As we know, implementation is frequently impacted by the presence or lack of strong systems to support it. This necessitates returning to the district systems framework and asking important questions to be sure the systems in place are beneficial to all students.
We will now take a timeout for equity.
As we keep an equity lens throughout the entire process, remember that the evidence is critical and key to consistently asking questions that will make a difference in the lives of all students. Some of the points to consider are as listed. These questions could and should be related to the systems already in place which impact students in your district. So it is necessary to continually return to these frameworks and ask the following. Are the necessary systems components in place? How might the effectiveness of the system be affecting implementation and impact? And what kind of adjustments need to be made to either install or strengthen them? And with that, I'm going to hand things over to my colleague Sabrina Rudy to go into more detail around adjusting. Sabrina?
Thank you, Ellen. It is the third quarter. We have had sufficient time to implement the game plan, and monitoring has taken place. It is now time to determine if adjustments need to be made. Now that the ability to rigorously monitor your plan is built into the system, and you understand the importance of doing so, let's discuss making adjustments to the plan. Adjustments are based on evidence, the data you have collected during your monitoring. Just as monitoring can take place at multiple levels, so can adjustments. For example, perhaps monitoring took place at the building level. The teachers were provided with the professional learning, coaching, and resources necessary for implementation. When collecting monitoring data at this level, the adjustments necessary may be by individual school, or the adjustment may be at a larger scale, such as identifying additional supports to the teachers at multiple schools. Or perhaps a barrier at the systems level was discovered through the collection of data. Maybe the supports planned were not actually provided due to a systems level issue, such as lack of coverage while the teachers were scheduled to receive support, or perhaps the coach provided did not have the necessary skill set to coach. The more clearly defined the plan is, the easier it will be to monitor and determine if you should make adjustments and where. The ability to make adjustments to your plan has been added to the platform. Let's take a moment to introduce you to what the adjustment option looks like in the platform. After reviewing your monitoring data, if it is determined that an adjustment is necessary, you will find this at the bottom of the monitoring screen. You have the ability to record notes and choose the area to adjust. The note section is where you record the rationale for making an adjustment and the evidence used. There are 4 areas in the platform where adjustments can be made: to your data story, to the goal, to the strategy, and the activity. When making an adjustment to the data story, consider whether the data provides a complete picture. Perhaps monitoring data would complete the picture. Sometimes the monitoring data uncovers more than the initial data discovery. For example, we have now discovered using our monitoring tools that our original data story did not provide a clear enough picture of the attendance challenges at our different schools. Looking at the data shows us that each school has its own unique challenge for attendance. When considering whether an adjustment needs to be made to the goal, consider if the interim and/or end target timelines need to be changed. Remembering that this decision is made based on data. Be careful to try to stick to these timelines, as we do not want to rely on the ability to adjust these dates as a reason to delay monitoring. If the data shows a need to adjust the strategy, consider whether there has been sufficient time provided for implementation. Remember that there is often what is referred to as implementation dip when implementing a new strategy. Maybe there's a need to adjust the activity. Perhaps you discovered during the monitoring process that an activity has not even occurred yet, and the timeline needs to be adjusted, or an additional activity will need to be added to ensure implementation. In our example, we discovered through monitoring that staff was not provided consistent training to understand the attendance protocols, the definition of chronically absent, provided access to attendance data, and even how to log calls and text messages to families of chronically absent students. These are pieces that could be added to your strategy implementation guide, or an adjustment could be made in the MICIP platform to your activities. As you continue to collect and review monitoring data, some needs may become evident that you were not aware of before. While the hexagon tool is used during the planning stage when choosing a strategy, it may be a good time to revisit this tool now that you have additional information. For example, let's say during monitoring, you realize that one of the areas the team gave a strong rating isn't really showing as a strength now that you are monitoring. This may prompt you to make an adjustment to the activities that are mapped to your strategy. To address this, or consider your timeline for the strategy. Or perhaps your workforce has changed since using the hexagon tool and choosing your strategy, and it would make sense to reevaluate the strategy, focusing on capacity and supports.
We will now take a timeout for equity.
Is equity the foundation, a mindset, and your approach when considering adjustments at any of the 4 areas: data story, goal, strategy, and activity? Have you considered how your adjustments will impact your student population? Asking yourself who is benefiting and even who does not benefit. Was the monitoring data you used to determine a need for an adjustment disaggregated by student identity characteristics? The continuous improvement process is designed to see, understand, and reduce undesirable outcomes that a system produces. Equity is not addressed unless it is an intentional, integrated aspect of this process. You ask those that experience the system, raising stakeholder voices when you developed your plan. Don't forget to ask them when adjusting the plan as well. I will now pass it off to my colleague, Kevin.
Thank you, Sabrina. And we know that there are many things competing for your time, energy, and attention. As we enter the 4th quarter in our metaphor and in the actual school year, we want to finish strong and play until the final whistle. The changing of the seasons, the rhythm of the school year, and annual state standardized assessments all can lead to feeling a need for stepping back, taking a breather, or checking out early. There may even be the thought that school improvement season is upon you as well, with that traditional mindset. Remember that MICIP truly is an ongoing cyclical process. There is no submit button in the platform as there was in the past, and your deadlines and timelines for what you put in place are determined by you and your team. Every day of teaching and learning is important, and implementation and monitoring of district strategies remain important factors in student success and reaching district goals. Let's refer back to how we devised our communication plan, which was addressed in an earlier session, and revisit questions that we asked earlier in the process. If we found that we needed to make adjustments to our MICIP plans, those changes cannot exist within a vacuum. If the plan is to be carried out as intended, the players impacted by the changes need to know. When changes are made, the recording of the evidence and decisions in the monitor and adjust portions of the platform serves as a reference for the current team members and as a tool to bring new team members up to speed, much as Sabrina just mentioned with the hexagon tool. Now the team needs to decide what needs to be communicated. How do we communicate the change? What methods will have the best results and reach your intended stakeholders? When will it be communicated? Consider how the school calendar may impact these decisions. How often will updates be shared? By whom? And to whom? As Alin mentioned earlier, you want consistent, cohesive implementation. Now, this clarity of communication will be key.
We will now take a timeout for equity.
The final stretch of this school year is important for all students, but it is critically important for those who are not benefiting from the way things currently are, due to the systems, structures, policies, and practices that lead to disparate outcomes. Ask yourself, who is not benefiting from the way things are? Any positive change in these areas can have long-lasting impact. This is the chance to hear from the students and other stakeholders in order to bring the current data picture into focus and inform any dialogue around making adjustments. Just as a coach can use a critical eye while gathering information from the sideline, the players share invaluable input based on what they see while on the court. In terms of improvement processes, this home stretch can also provides opportunities to reflect on whose perspectives are being included and centered. As was mentioned in the previous slide, the communication plan can be an avenue to include more voices in your district's improvement efforts. In basketball, the best players often are removed from the game when it is believed that the outcome already has been decided. This is commonly referred to as garbage time. We want to ensure that no one and no time in school is seen as disposable or unworthy of our best. We also don't want to concede that outcomes are already determined and can't be changed. Conversely, it also provides an opportunity for others to get a chance to play and gain experience with the hope of contributing and more meaningful participation in the future. As we enter these last few months of the year, remember the goals, the vision, and the mission that inspire you to help each of your district students to reach their next victory. The resources and tools that accompany this session include the Hexagon tool, the MICIP Collaboration Series resources, and the MICIP Monitor and Adjust Guide. In addition, our Wayne Risa Continuous Improvement site has additional resources, as well as the recordings of the previous MICIP Monday sessions in case you weren't able to attend. Please utilize them as necessary to assist you in your district's continuous improvement efforts. We thank you for your commitment to the students, families, and staff in your school and district communities. Look for us on Twitter at WRISA_EdImprove, or please contact us or your district liaison for additional support with MICIP.